Miraculously, the tour that Glenn and a couple of staff took the sculptor on was completed before the COVID epidemic hit. And that was a really good opportunity for Brian to see and hear from a wide variety of constituents across the Commonwealth, both here in Hampton and in Richmond and in Washington, D.C., and at a collection of universities, including my alma mater at William & Mary, and at Howard in D.C., and at Hampton here across the street, and at Norfolk State. I think he heard a lot. I think he learned a lot. I think he was able to convey in words what he envisions. And you know, then the pandemic hit and things slowed down. There are transcripts available of all of those conversations and presentations, one of which included an evening hosted by the governor in Richmond. We've had amazing support and interest expressed from leadership in Richmond, including all the way up to the governor. Our sculptor has completed his conceptual design. We are now figuring out exactly how to fit that into a landscape plan, or fit the landscape plan into the sculpture. There have been various conversations about how to do that. One is obviously just contracting with an architectural firm, a landscape architecture firm. Another might be to have a competition among university landscape architecture schools to come up with some design proposals. That hasn't been settled at this point. The bottom line is that once the landscape design and the sculpture design are at the conceptual approval stage, it will come to this board. We'll have to vote on it. And then the foundation, the Fork Grove Foundation, will proceed with fundraising for the artwork. FMA fortunately has some money in hand to support probably not all that's needed for the landscaping. We'll have to figure out what the total budget's going to be once we know what the design is going to be. There will be much more public engagement as this goes along, including before it comes to the board. Once we have the full design in mind, there'll be public meetings around the area, and perhaps you might want to go back to Richmond with it, and perhaps elsewhere as well. We want as much awareness and publicity and support as we can get for this first big commemorative art project at Fort Monroe, that for which we're going to need to raise some millions of dollars. And I think the foundation is prepared to do that, but the greater visibility and the greater constituency that we have aware of this when the time comes, the better, and the easier the fundraising will be. I don't have anything else to add to that unless people have questions.
Madam Chair, if I might, I want to say that one of the things, what an experience to spend a week meeting a guy in an airport and spending a week and 16, I think we ate 16 different meals together, drove several hundred miles, and did all these public meetings together. It was really, somebody should have documented how we met and how we worked ourselves together, but we were both artistically minded, him much more than me, but we had a great time. But as we began to talk about ideas in the car, we couldn't help it. As soon as we got back to Fort Monroe, we wanted to ground truth one of the ideas. So we're not ready to, we've got some public engagement that we need to do as we roll out Brian's conceptual ideas, but I just want to point out this to you, that working with the public works staff at Fort Monroe and so forth, you'll see the cone there in the middle, and then you'll see the line going towards the dolly, and then you'll see the white pole, and there's a line on the ground. Brian and I, working with the public and ideas that we got, we came with this idea, we have to orient this memorial so that at some point you are standing on this memorial and you are looking at something or through something, and you are looking across the horizon and across the globe, and you are looking at the door of no return in Africa. And it is a chilling concept. And so we, Brian and I, look forward to figuring out, and we'll be working with, as directed by the Governor's Chief of Staff, we'll be working with Janet Stark at the Virginia Arts Commission and her board, very experienced in public engagement and so forth. We're going to be finding ways to get together with the public. At the end of the day, the presentation comes to you, and you as the Board of Trustees will be the ones who actually vote and endorse the project, and that will then launch the Fort Monroe Foundation and Brian into his more refined design, which will be a maquette, and we'll come up with very exact dimensions. We'll develop exact cost estimates. We'll know exactly what the park space will look like and what that will cost, and then that will become the cornerstone for our foundation fundraising and moving forward. I think this is going to go, I hope it's going to go quicker than we think. I always have a big appetite for exciting things, but we're really excited about where we're headed.
Any questions? Yes,
Dr. Ellis.
From a media standpoint, from a public relations standpoint, because I think it's real important. There's a lot of lip service out there now about what institutions are going to do. Whether all of that becomes reality or not is yet to be seen. This monument represents a reality. It represents our, not only commitment, but our belief that Black Lives Matter. And it is something that I think will exponentially increase the public's embracing of Fort Monroe as a place that honors this reality. So I think that finding a way, not to pat ourselves on the back, but acknowledge that we hear what's going on now, and we are making every effort to make the reform and the change a reality. It doesn't relate to law enforcement, but it does relate to the overall sort of commitment to honor Black lives.
Any other comments? Sorry, your hand.
Stuck on the elastic. I'm looking at this picture, and in the previous portion of the meeting, talking about Black Lives Matter, talking about the National Park Service, the word sacred kept going through my head. It's not a term that I use lightly. I think that there's something, another word, magical. I want to just not trivialize that term. But when I see this, and when I have the opportunity to kind of stand in that space and talking about orientation to the door of no return, it just, to me, underscores the sacredness of this space. And I think that we'll acknowledge that. And I think if there's a way to kind of leverage that message in a meaningful way in terms of fundraising, I think that could be very useful. But I think that there is something very sacred about this place, about this moment, about the ambition that we have here, an opportunity to do something. And I see this very much as reflected by the Door of No Return orientation, as something that's bigger than, that's Virginia, but it's bigger than Virginia as well. I see this as diaspora, and I think that's something that we can lay hold of as we continue to go forward. Just some thoughts.
It's a sacred space.
In building upon that, if I might, Madam Chair, when I first came to Fort Monroe and we were trying to figure out what to do here and so forth, one of the things I said was, for heaven's sakes, this isn't Gettysburg. Nobody died here. There were no battles. I look back at that now as what a Neanderthal I was. Now, I look at this space and I think, what died here was freedom. And what survived was hope. And that's the essence of trying to capture this space. It is sacred. There is blood. It's the death of freedom that took place in some people's lives. And
The death of freedom and the rebirth of freedom.
well, I know, yes, when you connect, and that sort of goes to the Harriet Tubman. We keep being dragged into this Harriet Tubman discussion because, as soon as you do this memorial, somebody's going to want to do, for me, the next appropriate memorial is the three guys who drug their boat up up on the shore and ran to the gate. But then you've got John Reynolds who's going to be whispering in my ear. What about the native Indians that were here before that? I mean, but again, even in my own Neanderthal state that I was in, 8.5, 9 years ago, even then when we talked about the park space at Fort Monroe, we said this is a place for public art, appropriate public art. Harriet Tubman would be another example of appropriate public art. So we are. I mean, this is really like a volcano, and the lava is still in the heart yet. We're still trying to figure this out, but we're making great strides. And this is part of the healing truth for our country, right here. That's what I see this as.